I love that little clip you did for us at the start there, Mark. welcome,
I
welcome
am
back.
not hearing you, Andy.
You're not. Sound is
I
gone.
am not hearing you.
We'll see if anyone in the audience is hearing.
I don't hear you, but you can hear me,
I can hear you just fine.
but I'm not
Let me
hearing you.
try and plug into a different mic. Testing, testing.
Go with the backup headphones.
Go into another mic.
No, I still don't hear you.
Go into another mic.
We've got the sounds of science is coming through like the sounds of silence at this point for Andy. But we are not hearing him.
Why are you
Oh,
not hearing me?
there you go.
Now
Now you're back.
I'm back. Am I
Yeah,
still here?
you are. You are. Now you are
Fantastic.
back. All right,
I
take
was
it
just
away.
saying, how was your holiday?
Holiday was nice. It was.
Nice.
It seems like it was about 5 years ago, but it was really fun. How about yours?
It was excellent.
Good.
Um, I think we should jump right in and
I agree.
skip the holiday hello. We did that. Welcome back to listeners. If you're here, please drop a name in the chat, and I'll give you two categories we're going to talk about. One is mental, one's physical. So we're talking about public speaking anxiety today, which you see here, and then we're going to talk about preparation and how do we um, not overcome it. I don't know if you saw Mark today or if you follow Andy Kovacs. He did a post earlier today and said, public speaking anxiety is your friend. I was like,
Mhm.
whoa, okay. But it just meant it tunes you up, right? It means you care.
Right.
It means you
Exactly.
care.
Yeah, and I think that, and we're going to talk about this a lot. So, if you want to start out, I have a lot of thoughts about this
Well, go for it.
harnessing
Let's
the
hear it.
anxiety. Yeah, first of all, everyone gets nervous before a talk or something important, and like Andy was alluding to, it can be your friend as long as it's not debilitating. So it's like that friend that you kind of have fun with, but maybe after a while you get, it just starts to bug you. I guess I would say that we're going to talk about how to harness the anxiety and actually direct it in a way that is very helpful. It certainly keeps you alert. And the other thing is public speaking anxiety is closely related to excitement, like in a positive way. So as long as it's kind of kept at a manageable level, it is going to keep you more alert. And when people tell you to calm down, that's actually the worst
Oh
advice that
God,
you
I
can
hate
get.
that. Just calm
Yeah.
down. Just it's like ums and uhs. Just don't say Like, great, you put that in my head. I'm going to be umming for the next 20 minutes. Sorry about that, Mark.
Yeah, it's really true. So if you're feeling anxious, don't try to calm down. Remember, it's completely normal. It's much easier to say to yourself, look, this is a big speech or important presentation, and I am excited about it. I am excited about it. I have a great opportunity to share the information that I know with this group, and that is really exciting. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to be, I'm going to be on. Those are the positive sort of affirmations that you want to tell yourself. Not, okay, I just need to calm down. It's going to be okay. That's not where you want to go.
Yeah. It's like telling someone to not think about a pink elephant, right? If I tell you to not think about it, just don't be anxious. It's like you have to replace that with something. So I think of two paths in this space. Um, one is the mental, what you're talking about of thinking about it as excitement, thinking about it as care. Um, but there was a little piece you snuck in there, as long as it's not too much, right? And that was the post that I did earlier today. um, that says, okay, sometimes you need what I call a circuit breaker. So you're getting wound up, wound up, wound up, and then you can't reposition it because your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight, is actually a bit out of control.
Mhm.
So a little bit's good, maybe even more than a little bit's good. It's healthy. It means you care. It means you're going to start with energy. But too much, and you're in trouble. You need a volume control. You need to be able to turn it down. You need to be able to switch the dial from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying exactly, Andy, is so how do you do that switch? So you start to feel yourself getting nervous, and it can be like you were saying, like it can be physical. It can also be in your mind. So look, I'm starting to get keyed up, and it's completely normal because I have a lot of important things to say. And that's exciting because I'm going to have this opportunity to share my knowledge and my information
Right.
with this group. I think that's the kind of positive talk that can help you turn that dial from, oh my gosh, this is so, scary, to, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity and look at all the advantages that can come from this.
Right. Yeah, and what I'm talking about is a circuit breaker. So so instead of these like adjustments, it's like how do we actually reset? Like the reset button. Like Houston, we have a problem. Let's start over. And I've been through this. Like I've had this issue myself where I've gotten excited, and then I'm like, okay, wait a minute, too far. You got to reset. And I do it with clients through breathing. And I have always done this a little bit, but I got more and more into it in the last year with a personal yoga practice that I've started because we do a lot of breathing exercises in the yoga. Um, and I use a very simple box breathing. There's also 6, 7, 8. Some people do belly breathing. Any of these things you can Google. Um, but they all have a couple of commonalities to them, and they're both mental and physical. So there's a physiological reaction that happens when you control your breathing and you control the relative CO2 and O2 levels, and you stimulate something called the vagal nerve, which is in the back of your throat. Um, and that combination is actually a circuit breaker to your sympathetic nervous system and flips you over. Um, and short circuits that fight or flight response. So if you were going to Google them, box breathing, 6, 7, 8 or 7, 6, 8, I forget, or belly breathing is another one. So there's a physical component, and then sometimes I talk to people about this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, but it doesn't work for me." And every time I every time I have that conversation with them, it's because they're not doing the mental part. And the mental part is you have to listen to yourself and think about and feel your breathing. Because what that does is you're no longer thinking about your talk for a minute. So like the the crescendo was building too early, too soon, like the wave got too big, right? It's like you're surfing and you're pretty good in a 3 or 4 foot nice controlled swell, and somebody threw you out on the north shore of Waikiki. Suddenly you're like, whoa, no. And you need a reset. So that for me is um, part of my warm-up routine. I did that actually before I came on air tonight, because what I want to do is I want to build a routine that I do the same thing all the time. And I want to know where I am. So I take myself too low and then I build.
And I think it's an important point because everyone should figure out what works for them. There are different routines that might be more effective for one person or another, and it's just finding that pre-talk routine. Maybe it's taking a walk. Maybe, and this is something that I've done, is like knock out 25 push-ups really quick
Yeah.
you know
Right.
and I think it also can help with the physical aspect of the anxiety, when you do those, because you start to feel more present in your body, and you're not having this like out of body anxiety experience where you've kind of lost perspective. You're actually more grounded, maybe, and maybe that will work for you. Maybe there's something else that doesn't work for you, that works for you. Pardon me. I think the first thing though is, okay, recognizing when that massive wave, if you want to use Andy's metaphor, is building and you're starting to get really kind of freaked out. You want to recognize that as early as possible, and be kind to yourself and recognize, like, this is part of what most people go through. Butterflies, however big, however many, in the stomach, is something that happens all the time to many, many, many people, even people who are so schooled, or so used to talking in front of groups. And then just recognize, once you feel it, that it's coming. It's like, look, this is not this. This can be a positive sign, because I can control it, and I can modulate it, and I can direct it towards these positives. And that way you get the benefit when you're talking, because you do want to be alert. You do want to really be alert and on your toes. You don't want to be like too, because of course we're talking about energy, and we want you to be energetic and excited when you're talking to groups and making an important presentation. And having some level of anxiety is an energy source. As long as you realize that it's coming, recognize it for what it is, and it doesn't get cranked up so high that you need a circuit breaker, to break it. My thing, I think my metaphor is more like, I want you to, and I think, again, circuit breaker works. My metaphor, the way I think about it, is you're actually like changing the frequency. Like you've got this
Yeah.
dial, and it's broadcasting on bad, too much energy. It's a bad thing, and I want you to turn the dial so you kind of actually lower it a little bit, and you start listening to a different channel now, which is much more positive, controlled, and actually enabling you to use it in a positive direction, as far as being excited. Because, again, not a neuroscientist, work with a lot of them, but not one myself. But what I've learned is that the the stimulus for anxiety and nervousness is closely related neurologically to that of excitement. And
Right.
so
And
change the dial just a
we
little bit.
confuse them, right? Like, I think I'm going to be anxious, but I'm actually excited, but then I interpret it as anxious. So it's about trying to, the mental aspect of this is about, for me, the mental aspect of this is about interpreting it the right way, and the physical aspect of it is about controlling it so it's not too high or too low. Um, and I think one of the mistakes I really see people make when they practice, so they spend a lot of rehearsal time, but they never rehearse the 5 minutes before the presentation. They only rehearse from go.
Yeah,
And you need to actually rehearse from 5 minutes out. One of the analogies I always use here is, if you look at, I am a skier, right? I'm addicted to winter sports. I live in Canada. I can't help it. I apologize. But if you look
isn't
at
that
the
required, by the way, to get your passport, that you actually love to ski and you love winter sports? Otherwise, like, they just won't let you get a Canadian passport.
Yeah, I think so. But you know what? We could do it with soccer. We just had the World Cup, and if you watch the World Cup, they have penalty kicks, right? Or we just had NFL playoffs. Same thing. They're kickers in the NFL, and if you watch their routine, it starts not at the snap of the ball. Like you watch a kicker, it doesn't start at the snap of the ball. It backs up 20 seconds. They walk up to where the kicker is, they take 3 steps back and 1 step sideways, they turn, they pause, the kick happens, they come and they hit. Like there's a whole bunch of things happening before the snap of the football. Or there are a whole lot of things happening with penalty kicks before they start running towards the ball. And
Yeah.
it's that pre-start routine that you need.
Yeah, and it's so true. And also making your rehearsals, particularly as you get closer to the actual presentation, as similar to the actual event as possible. So I would say like try to practice under game day conditions. So as you get closer, like wear what you're going to wear for the speech. If you can get into the venue and do that like a walkthrough or stand where you're going to be standing, do that because like we're suggesting here eliminating all these variables or solving for all these variables beforehand really reduces the cognitive load that you have the day of so that you can redirect that energy right into the speech. You don't need to worry about, oh, like I'm wearing something different and now I'm in a different place. And these are all potentially intrusive thoughts, or just, I think we're kind of wired to be comfortable with similarity and also wary of things that are unknown, right? And so when you reduce the number of unknowns, like, okay, I've been in this spot before, I've worn this outfit, but I've spoken these words before, and I have a routine that I've done before. Like all of those things they don't take up space or, let's just say, processing power in your brain anymore day of.
Yeah, the more that's so important. The more you can eliminate the unknowns cuz something's going to happen that's unknown.
That's so
There
true.
there is no way like you're going to be expecting a lapel mic and the lapel mic's not going to work and someone's going to stick a microphone in your hand and you're going to have to use the microphone in your hand. Or the screen that you thought was going to be, you know, behind you on the stage is now next to you on the stage. Or the podium that you didn't think was going to be on the stage is like there's always something. There's
Mm-hmm.
always
It's true.
something. But if you can if you can ground yourself in your own routine, then you have something you can go to. And you won't be thrown off by whatever that something unexpected is, right?
Yeah. And it's so true that it happens. My last keynote, there were issues. I did a tech walkthrough the day before, there were no issues. The morning of, there were issues. And the event planner is there and she's, trying to figure out what's going on. And then the laptop has to be moved with the sound guy, which means that, and I was just calm.
Yep.
I was just trying to take it down a notch. I was fine. And a lot of that comes from, the rehearsal and the routine, and trying to redirect anxiety towards excitement and keeping it under control.
I have another question for you. On a scale of like 1 to 10, how prepared were you from a content standpoint?
Yeah. So I was feeling really prepared. So I was like in the 8 range. Um, and so it enabled me to not, I guess if you think about it, as a result of that, I I was calm enough with my content and confident enough with my delivery that having these little blips didn't didn't throw me. The other thing is getting there early. I always
Yeah.
I always
But,
recommend
but
if
but
you
before
can
you
get
get
there
there,
early, do
before
that.
you get there
Yeah,
early, because sometimes
yeah.
you get stuck in a traffic jam. Sometimes,
True.
like I was,
Can't find parking.
I was going to McMaster's University to do a talk there, and there was a snowstorm. I'm like sitting on the runway in Montreal, wondering, like doing the math, and instead of showing up 2 hours early, I showed up 10 minutes early.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
sometimes there's nothing you can do, but I want to come back to that content piece for a minute. Because for those of you out there who say, I get anxious speaking, I get anxious speaking, I get anxious speaking. And if you're also somebody who is playing around with your slide deck the night before, and the morning of you're maybe rethinking the opening, or you're like, I'm not sure if I should add that. Or it's going to take you a minute longer than it should, so you're like, I'm going to have to go really quickly. You've never been prepared. So
right.
part of the reason you're anxious is because, frankly, you should be, because you're not prepared. And
Yeah,
that's just, there's so, the people don't understand how much they should prepare. And then they're anxious and they under prepare, and then they worry why they're anxious. And part of why they're anxious is because they're underprepared. And
it's so true.
none of this other stuff we're talking about is going to help you through that.
Yeah, it's so
Prepare
true.
more.
And yeah, it's prepare more than think you need to. And I'll just say one quick thing on how you know you're prepared, because this comes up a lot. And I was just, you know, contributing some comments in this big public speaking group that I'm a part of, and people were saying, I'm having trouble memorizing my speech. And I said, actually, don't memorize your speech. And here's what you should do, instead. But it kind of boils down to the metaphor that I would use is that when you first learn another language, so I lived in France, so I had to learn French. When you first learn it, you're translating everything in that language that you hear back into English. Oh, I know, here's what they said. Oh, this is what it means. And then you're recognizing in English. Then you're back translating into French. And that's when you say it in French, because you're among French speakers. You are living in France, in my case. Well, of course, that doesn't work. And it's actually only a juncture, like it's only a milestone in your quest for fluency. Optimally, and what will happen eventually is that you will actually be living in that other language, and there won't be any intermediate language. You'll just see something or hear something, and you will immediately respond in that language because you are associating it with that language and your life in that language, and your English in my case will fall away, and you won't actually even be thinking in English. You'll be living in the
in
language.
the other
And what I
language.
yeah, and what I said to this person who
I
said she was having trouble memorizing is live in your speech. Live in your speech. Don't be trying to memorize it like thinking, oh, where is that in the text? Right? Oh, I skipped a paragraph. Of course, your audience doesn't even know where you are in that speech or whatever. Only you do. But don't be trying to go back to the text when you're in front of the audience. You have to be living it. And as Andy, as you're talking about this practice, that's you're only going to get there with a lot of practice. You have to live and embody the speech itself, and not trying to spend all your time up there thinking, where am I in this speech, and trying to think back to the text, because the audience can pick up that, and it's going to be a disconnect because you're not really communicating with the audience. You're just trying to remember your speech.
Right. Christine had a just dropped a question in the chat. Thanks,
Mhm.
Christine. Great to see you here. Um, and talking about routine and rehearsals being counterproductive if you go too far. And the where's his book? So Chris Anderson talks about this. And if you don't have this, this is a good read for um, people in this space. So it's Chris Anderson TED Talks. He calls it, I think I have the term right. I'll go and I'll double check later. He calls it the valley of death, where if you memorize and you get too rote, you get worse because it sounds rehearsed.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. And
only when you have to get beyond that point.
yeah.
And one
Yeah.
of the things I usually work on with people is actually not memorizing, um, but so that you don't, but you can still rehearse a lot, but don't try and say exactly the same thing every time. So tell the
Right.
same story. And if you think about this in terms of storytelling, if I told you a story and then I told you the same story again tomorrow, I'd use slightly different words. If we think about
Right.
our
Because
talk that way,
you know the talk so well, you know the subject so well. I just want to respond very quickly to 2 points, one from Christine and one from Sadaf. And Sadaf, if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. One way to deal with your point is when I speak in front of people, there's that shiver of the first 10 seconds, shows them my sound for the first 10, 15 seconds. One thing you can consider doing, and I've done this before, is greet people in the audience, greet people as they come into the room. Just say, hey, I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to be talking to everybody in like 10 minutes. Speak to people before you actually get up on stage and speak in front of everybody, and it will loosen you up. That's one possibility. The other is to actually talk to audience members. If it's an event organizer, someone say, hey, can I talk to a couple of people who are going to be in the audience like this, like 2 weeks before, just to get a sense of what they're really interested in. That can lower the temperature as well. But if you can't do that, actually greeting people in the as they enter the room or while they're seated is a really good way to get those first few seconds, because you're warming up essentially. And
right?
then I would recommend this response to Christine. I'd recommend that you listen to the Moth Radio Hour if you haven't before. All it is stories and storytelling, and listen to the people talking about it, and kind of think about, did they sound too rehearsed or not? And I will tell you that recently went with my wife to a live taping of the Moth, which was awesome, and people were really good. There was one woman who spoke, and she was so polished that it was a turnoff. And so as soon as she finished, the organizer said, are you a writer? And she said, yes. And it was like she literally read in her head like one chapter of her book or her manuscript. So the thing is, when you get up there, you're not trying to remember every single word according to your preparation. I think that's the key. You really want to be inside it and know it so well, and you can definitely tell the difference. But if you check out the Moth Radio Hour, you can start listening to people tell their stories and get a sense of whether they sound too rehearsed or not.
I'll add two things to that. One is, um, I like to think about a great presentation more like jazz than rock and roll, where there's room. Every time you listen to a jazz song, it's a little different. Whereas a rock and roll song, like you go listen to it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like you're going to hear the same song, right? And I think that um, making sure there's room in your talk for jazz, right? And then the other thing that I lied. I have three things. Sadaf, I have one more thing for you too, and that is get a voice warm up routine. Julian Treasure has a good one, but just Google voice warm up routine, because what's happening in that first 15 seconds is your voice isn't warmed up. So one
Mm-hmm.
way to do that is talk with people. The other way to do that is have a voice warm up routine you can do backstage to actually warm your vocal cords up. Um, the other thing I was going to say, and Christine, this speaks a little to what you're saying with routine and rehearsals. Um, my friend Martin Barnes has a great um, piece that he's done that says, your talk should have three lengths. Every talk should have three lengths. should have a 60-second version, a 3-minute version, and then whatever the heck your version is, 10, 12, 14. And I'll post the visual. I'll tag the visual into the comments on this show later so you can see it. I've posted it before. But one of the things I like to do with people in rehearsals is say, okay, we're going to do the 5-minute version today. We're not doing the whole talk. We're doing the whole talk, but we're not doing the 12-minute version. We're doing the 3-minute version. Just give me the 3-minute version. Because what that ensures that people are able to do is move in and out of these different spaces and lengths, and it keeps it, even though it's rehearsed, it sounds conversational. Even though it's rehearsed, it sounds improvisational. And that's what audiences crave. They don't want you hearing, they don't want to listen to you read from your own head, which is what memorized speeches sometimes sound like, right? And so play around in this improv space. The other thing I do is don't start at the beginning. Like just do the middle 3 minutes or just do the last 3 minutes. So that again, you're getting uber comfortable with your talk. And then when you go and do it, you may be anxious because there's an audience, but you're not anxious because you're not sure what you're going to say. And if you've never over prepared, then you'll never know if the anxiety is coming from being scared of public speaking or being scared because you don't know actually because you're not actually prepared. And I think that's one of the reasons so many people have so much fear of public speaking is because a lot of the times they're underprepared.
Right. Andy, I think we're a little over our time here. We could go on and on and on here. We will, though. We should preview what we're going to do next time out for folks as well, huh?
Yeah.
This is where I'm throwing it over to you to tell people.
There you go. So pre-winter break, so we took a month off there. We had decided we were going to talk about presence. How are we on stage? So we spent the first 3 episodes talking a lot about content, and now we're talking about presence. And this was kind of our intro. So one of the things we want to be is confident and not be anxious. So this was about dealing with the anxiety part, and our next 2 shows will be about voice and body language. So how do we want to sound and how do we want to be seen? So now that we've had a bit of a conversation about how to overcome or manage the anxiety and the excitement level, we're going to talk about, okay, how do you want to be? Now that you have a choice because you're managing your anxiety, how do you want to choose to be? So we're going to talk about body language, and we're going to talk about voice in our next 2 sessions, 2 weeks and 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, great. This has been wonderful, really good comments, and thank you for sharing. We're going to have this posted. Obviously, the live stream is out there, but once we finish up this episode of Sounds of Science Live, you'll have opportunities, and others will have opportunities to comment as it stays as a post in the various channels. If you haven't already gone to the LinkedIn page for Sounds of Science, and you can do that and like that, please take a look at Sounds of Science Live on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thanks so much,
Uh,
everybody. Christine,
thanks,
sign off.
everybody.
Thanks for joining us, and we will
Thanks for
see you
joining
in
us
two
live.
weeks.